Give your sister your penthouse as a wedding gift, my father said into the mic, his voice booming over the chandeliers, steady proud. 200 guests froze mid-toast. My mother's smile didn't flicker. Charlotte blinked, pretending to be surprised. I stood there holding my glass, every eye burning into me. The music had stopped. Someone whispered my name. Then a man I'd never seen before rose from the crowd and said, calm but sharp, touch her assets again and you'll lose yours. The hall went silent, my father's jaw locked. Before I tell you the rest, tell me, where are you listening from so I know I'm not alone? I used to think silence kept the peace. That if I smiled at the right moments, nodded at the right times, and never let my voice shake, my family would finally see me as one of their own. But peace built on silence cracks fast, especially in a house like ours. My parents loved appearances. My mother, Carol, believed perfection could be arranged like centerpieces, carefully trimmed, polished, and shown off to the world. My father, Richard, lived for applause. Charlotte was their masterpiece, the one who could do no wrong. And me, I was the line item they couldn't brag about but couldn't afford to lose. When people asked about my job, my mother would laugh lightly and say, Isabella worked somewhere in finance. I think she never mentioned that I was vice president of Asia Pacific Development, that my signature could move millions. To her, success only counted if it came with a husband attached. Charlotte, on the other hand, didn't need to earn her shine. She was soft-spoken, radiant, the perfect daughter. She'd call me her big sister in front of guests like it was an accessory, a sweet prop to make her look humble. I played along for years. I funded the little things that kept our family image intact, paid off a mortgage when my father's deal went sideways, wired money to Mom for emergency bills, and even transferred $50,000 to cover Charlotte's wedding. They never asked twice, they just accepted like it was my duty. The week before the wedding, my father pulled me aside. You'll sit at the front, he said. Your family, of course, just remember it's Charlotte's day, keep things simple. Simple. I laughed later alone in my car. He had no idea what simple meant. Before I continue the story, tell me first, where did you hear this from? Write it in the comments, because what happens next, most people won't believe. When I arrived at the rehearsal dinner, the lights glowed soft gold over white roses. Everything was perfect, designed for photographs. My mother fussed over Charlotte's veil. My father shook hands with investors more than relatives. I stood by the bar, unnoticed, invisible again. Then Charlotte turned, her smile sugars were sweet. Issa, thank you again for helping us with the expenses, she said loudly enough for a few tables to hear. I felt the sting in the word helping. My father nodded approvingly. That was how they liked it, public gratitude that sounded generous but made me small. Still, I told myself it didn't matter, I'd show up, sit quietly, play my part, one more night, one more performance. I didn't know that behind their polished smiles, my family had written me into the program of the wedding as the opening act, the sacrifice to make their perfect day complete. The morning of the wedding shimmered with that kind of sunlight that makes everything look innocent. But underneath the flowers and champagne chillers, I could feel something wrong pulsing through the day. My gut always knew before my mind did. I arrived at the hotel ballroom early. The scent of white lees too heavy in the air. Staff buzzed like bees draping fabric, polishing glasses. My mother's voice cut through it all, sharp, commanding. Make sure Charlotte's bouquet faces the left side, her profile photographs better. It wasn't a request, it never was. I was walking past the reception table when I noticed him. A man standing completely still, watching. He wore a charcoal grey suit and a tie flecked with silver, his posture calm but deliberate. He didn't look like any of the guests. When his eyes met mine, I froze. He gave a polite nod, then said quietly, be careful what they announced today. His tone was so even it almost sounded kind. Then he turned and disappeared into the bustle, leaving a chill behind him that clung to my skin. For a moment I wondered if I'd imagined it. But then my phone buzzed in my hand, a text from an unknown number. They'll take what's yours tonight, don't lose it. The words punched through my chest. I looked around, but no one was paying attention. My father was laughing with a group near the bar. My mother was adjusting Charlotte's train. Guests arrived in waves of perfume and noise. I stepped out to the corridor, heart racing. My penthouse, the one thing that was entirely mine. Every payment, every sleepless night, every deal that built it brick by brick. It couldn't be that, could it? Just then I heard my parents' voices through the half-open door of a side room. I shouldn't have stopped, but I did. My father's tone was low, measured. During the toast, we'll make the announcement. It'll make Charlotte's gift unforgettable. My mother chuckled softly. And Isabella won't dare refuse. Too many cameras, too many witnesses. Pride can be useful. Charlotte's voice came next, hesitant but pleased. Are you sure she'll be okay with it? My mother's reply was syrup over poison. She doesn't need that space. She has her work. You deserve a home. The blood drained from my face. They weren't just proud. They were planning it, to take what I built and parade it as a gesture of sisterly love. I pressed my back against the cold wall, every muscle stiff. The chandelier light spilled across the marble floor inside the room, dancing on their smiles. I didn't step in, not yet. Because for the first time in my life I wasn't the one who would react, I was the one who would remember. I went back to my suite without a word. The hallway smelled like roses and expensive nerves. Inside, air felt different still, expectant like the pause before a storm. I set my phone down on the counter and opened the drawer where I kept a single folder: documents, statements, payments, ownership proofs. Every number, every signature, every piece of paper that tied that penthouse to me. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at them. 10 years of work compressed into ink and lines. My parents didn't build that home. They didn't stay up through time zones or chase contracts that nearly broke me. They only knew how to spend what they never earned. I forwarded the documents to my lawyer with one line: be ready at 8:00 p.m. ballroom A. No explanation, no emotion. Then I changed into a deep navy dress, clean, structured, unshakable. I wasn't going to blend in anymore. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. My reflection looked calm, but beneath it was a blade waiting to be drawn. I fixed the diamond earrings I'd once bought to celebrate a deal that saved an entire department. That night they would serve a different purpose, a reminder of who I was before they tried to take it away. Downstairs the ballroom was already filling. The clinking of glasses, the hum of conversation, the soft strings playing in the background, it was all so polished it made me sick. I moved through the crowd unnoticed, my heels tapping softly on the tile. I caught fragments of gossip. Charlotte's wedding is perfect, such a classy family. Isabella looks tense. They had no idea what was about to happen. Charlotte glided by in her gown glowing under the lights. I'm so glad you came, she said sweetly, her hand brushing my arm like we were equals. I almost smiled. Almost. Moments later my father clapped his hands for attention. Everyone, please take your seats for the toast. My stomach tightened. It was almost time. I moved toward a corner table, the one with the clearest view of the stage. The guest quieted, waiting for whatever grand announcement he'd prepared. He adjusted the mic, scanning the room, pride radiating from every inch of him. My mother stood beside him, glowing with satisfaction. I felt my pulse steady, not race. Whatever they were about to do, I was ready. I lifted my glass just enough to mask the faintest smile. If they wanted a performance, they were about to get one, just not the version they rehearsed. The sound of crystal against glass rang out across the ballroom, 3 sharp taps that sliced through the hum of music and chatter. My father stood center stage, hand on the microphone, his silver cufflinks glinting beneath the chandeliers. Before dinner begins, he said, smiling wide, I'd like to say a few words about family. The crowd quieted instantly. Forks hovered midair. Charlotte stood beside him, the train of her gown cascading like a small river of white silk. My mother touched her shoulder tenderly, that performative affection she'd perfected long ago. I stayed seated a few tables away. Watching, I already knew what was coming, but the human brain always clings to the smallest hope that maybe, just maybe, you misunderstood. My father's voice deepened. A family's strength, he said, is measured not by what we keep, but by what we share. My grip tightened around my wine glass, the crystal stem pressed into my palm. And tonight, he continued, eyes sweeping the crowd, we have something extraordinary to celebrate. My eldest daughter, Isabella, has decided to give her sister. He paused for dramatic effect. Her penthouse as a wedding gift. The words dropped like a grenade. Applause broke out before I could even breathe. I heard gasps, laughter, a few cheers. Someone shouted, that's incredible. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment that was supposed to make me look generous, obedient, harmless. My father declared it into the mic before 200 guests, I thought. And I froze. I didn't stand, I didn't speak. For 3 endless seconds I couldn't move. The air thickened, the smell of champagne turning sour. Charlotte pressed a manicured hand to her mouth, eyes wide with fake surprise. My mother's smile glowed with victory. Isabella, my father said warmly, come join us up here, sweetheart, say a few words. 100 heads turned toward me. I could feel the heat of every stare waiting for me to smile, to play along. Instead, I took a slow sip of wine. The glass trembled only slightly in my hand. My father's grin faltered. Come on, darling. He coaxed the microphone, amplifying his cheer. Don't be shy. The music had stopped. My heart hadn't, and then a sound, a chair scraping against marble. At the far end of the room a man stood up, the same man from that morning, the one with the silver-flecked tie. His voice was calm, low, but carried through every corner of that glittering hall. Touch your assets again, he said, and you'll lose yours. The entire room froze. Silence fell so hard it felt physical. My father's face drained of color. Mother blinked, unsure whether to be angry or afraid. Charlotte clutched her bouquet, staring at the stranger. He began walking forward, each step echoing like a gavel strike. William Carter, he said, pulling a sleek card from his jacket. CEO of Carter Financial. The murmurs began instantly, gasps, whispers, people shifted in their seats. My father stumbled back half a step, recognition flashing in his eyes. I believe you know my company, William continued. We've been working closely with your daughter for 3 years now. The penthouse you're attempting to claim in this little announcement. He raised an eyebrow. Is part of her legal compensation package. It's protected by anti-coercion clauses under her executive contract. I could hear my mother's shaky breath from across the room. She reached for my father's arm, whispering something frantic. William's voice never wavered. What happened here tonight, he said, was a public attempt at asset seizure, and it's being live-streamed to over 10,000 viewers right now. Heads turned toward a nearby table where a cousin from the groom's side had his phone propped up. The red recording light glowed like an accusation. My father tried to recover his laugh, forced, brittle. This is all a misunderstanding, he said. A family joke perhaps taken too seriously. William's expression hardened. A joke that included coercion, public humiliation, and false claims of property transfer. He turned to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what exploitation looks like when it's dressed up as family love. The room erupted into whispers. A few guests rose from their seats. Others stared at me with new eyes, curiosity mixing with shame. My father's business partner, Mr. Patterson, stood up, his face pale. Richard, he said sharply, I invested in your company because I believed in your ethics. After this, Patterson Industries is suspending all collaboration effective immediately. Then Mrs. Williams from Logistics spoke up. Same here, we don't work with abusers. And finally, David Kim, my father's oldest associate, added quietly but firmly, neither do we. My father's hand gripped the mic stand like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Charlotte was crying now, soft, confused sobs that didn't quite reach her eyes. Dad, make it stop, she whispered, but it was already too late. The house of cards had collapsed. I stood slowly, the noise around me dissolving into a low hum. You wanted a spectacle, I said, voice steady. You got one. My mother turned toward me, her expression cracking. Isabella, please, she hissed, you're humiliating us. I took a step closer, my heels sharp against the marble. No, mother, you did that yourself. William handed her the microphone. Perhaps Mrs. Hayes would like to explain her behavior for the record, he said evenly. She shook her head, trembling. You can't do this, she whispered. I already did, I said. The crowd erupted again. Some gasped, others murmured approval. I saw phones raised, recording, capturing every second of my family's unraveling. My father's voice cracked through the chaos. Enough, this is our private matter. I met his eyes, you made it public. The silence that followed was colder than any scream. I didn't need to say more. William placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, guiding me toward the exit. Behind us, my mother's sobs rose. My father shouted something I didn't care to hear. And Charlotte's wedding day turned into a live broadcast of consequence. As the ballroom doors closed, I heard the last sound, a single glass shattering on the floor. Outside, the night air hit my skin like truth. I looked up at the city skyline, the reflection of my penthouse glittering in the distance. For the first time, I felt its walls weren't cages but armor. William stopped beside me. Are you all right? He asked quietly. I exhaled. I am now, he nodded. You handled that better than most would. I looked back at the glowing doors of the ballroom. No, I said softly. I just finally stopped apologizing. We stood there for a moment, two strangers bound by justice. Then he offered his card again. When you're ready, he said. I'd like to discuss something bigger. I didn't ask what. I already knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs, and behind us the hall that once celebrated my silence had fallen completely, irreversibly silent. By the next morning the clip had gone viral. 1 minute of footage, my father's announcement, my mother's slap, William's voice cutting through. The chaos circulated across every platform before sunrise. Headlines called it the wedding scandal that shattered a family. My inbox overflowed with messages from strangers thanking me for standing up from women who'd been told for years to keep peace at their own expense. Meanwhile, the fallout for my parents was swift and brutal. Patterson, Williams and Kim all withdrew their contracts. The company's stock dropped by half in 48 hours. My father's apology video suit tie hollow eyes was dismissed as damage control. My mother went online claiming she'd been manipulated only to be drowned by thousands of comments, calling her out for the slap everyone had seen in crystal clarity. Charlotte's perfect marriage unraveled before it began. Her husband's family backed out, unwilling to attach their name to the wreckage. I stayed silent through it all. I didn't need to defend myself. Truth had already done that for me. When William called to offer me a seat on Carter Financial's board, I said yes. Not for revenge, but for direction. Because for the first time I was no longer surviving my family. I was rebuilding myself. Weeks later, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse, the city lights flickering like quiet applause. The same glass walls they tried to take from me now reflected everything I'd earned. Freedom, clarity, peace. On the shelf beside me sat a framed photo of my grandmother, her handwritten note beneath it. "Don't let them take your light." I smiled. They hadn't, they never would. If you've ever had to stand alone at a table full of people who called it family, know this: you're not alone. Share your story below and hit subscribe. The next story might be yours.